Consumer protection. Banks responsible for failed transactions and no cash in ATMs. In a landmark consumer forum judgment now, if you do not get money from ATMs, it would be considered as deficiency of services on part of the bank. On May 4, 2017, a petition in the Consumer Forum in Raipur was filed where the complainant submitted photos and videos recording of three failed ATM transactions due to non-availability of cash bank's ATM. In front of the forum, the bank argued that ATM runs with internet connectivity, so at the time when users use ATM, he or she is not directly the bank client. Hence, if the said money not withdrawn from the ATM, then it cannot be termed as a deficiency of service. The forum rejected the bank's logic completely. The petition had the petitioner has presented photo and video recording at the time of withdrawal as evidence in front of the forum. Forum acknowledged that the consumer at various times go to the ATM to withdraw money. Every time the message of cash not available is the lack or in service. The forum accepted the petition. After hearing the argument of both the parties, the forum ordered that if the bank will not provide ATM services to the customer, then it will be considered a reduction in service. Customer forum imposed a fine of rupees 2500 on the bank, including rupees 1500 as compensation for mental harassment and rupees 1000 for legal expenses for non-availability of the cash in its ATM as deficiency in the bank's services. Introduction. Each one of us is a consumer in one way or the other. It is important for us to be an aware and informed consumer of goods and services available to us in the market. The above case is just one of the examples of the many problems that consumers face in the purchase, use, and consumption of goods and services. But very few consumers are aware of their rights given to them by the Consumer Protection Act 2019. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 has replaced the Act 1986 and seeks to widen its scope in addressing consumer concerns. Have you ever thought what would be the plight of consumers if adequate protection is not provided to them? With governing competition and in an attempt to increase their sales and market share, manufacturers, sellers, and service providers may be tempted to engage in unscrupulous, exploitative, and unfair trade practices like defective and unsafe products, adulteration, false and misleading advertising, hoarding, black marketing, etc. This means that the consumer might be exposed to risk due to unsafe products, might suffer from bad health due to adulterated food products, might be cheated because of misleading advertisements or sales of spurious products, might have to pay a higher price when sellers engage in overpricing, hoarding, or black marketing, etc. As a result, consumer becomes unsafe, feels cheated, and is exploited to many risk and health problems. Can business afford to ignore the interest of the consumers? The market forces have changed from a seller market, that is, the earlier approach of the caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware, to a consumer market, that is, caveat vendita, which implies let the seller beware. A consumer is said to be a king in the free market economy. Hence, consumer protection has significance for both consumers and business alike. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, the Government of India has confronted a legal protection to safeguard the interest of a consumer. Importance of consumer protection. The concept of consumer protection is to safeguard the interest of the consumers. It adopts measures to protect the consumers from unethical malpractices by businesses and provides a swift redressal of their grievance with regards to 1. Sale of adulterated goods, such as adding inferior substances to the product being sold; 2. Sale of counterfeit goods, such as selling a product of lesser value than the real product; 3. Sale of substandard goods, such as the sale of products that do not meet the prescribed quality standards; sale of duplicate goods; 4. Use of malfunctioning weights and measures that lead to underweight of products; 6. Black marketing and hoarding that eventually lead to scarcity of the products as and well as a rise in the price of the same; 7. Overcharging a product, that is charging a product above its maximum retail price; 8. Supplying of defective goods; 9. Advertisements that are misleading, that is, advertisements that falsely claim a product or a service to be shown as superior quality, grade, or standard when not in real. Supply of inferior services, that is, quality of service lesser than the condition agreed. Need for consumer protection. The need for consumer protection arises from the need to protect the consumers from the loss or injury or other prevailing malpractices and to ensure: 1. Physical safety of a consumer; 2. Access to information; 3. Corporate social responsibility to provide quality and quantity of goods at fair prices; 4. Consumer satisfaction; 5. Social justice and trusteeship; 6. Survival and the growth of business. That is why we as that is why we as an informed consumer have to wake up and save ourselves from various types of exploitation and should complain about it. Consumer protection has a wide scope. It not only includes educating consumers about their rights and responsibilities, but also helps in getting their grievances redressed. It is not only required it not only requires a judicial machinery for protecting the interest of consumers, but also requires the consumers to be united and form themselves into consumer associations for protection and promotion of their interest. From consumers' point of view, the importance of consumer protection from the consumer's point of view can be understood from the following points. 1. Consumer ignorance. In the light of widespread ignorance of consumers about their rights and relief available to them, it becomes necessary to educate them about the same so as to achieve consumer awareness. 2. Unorganized consumers. Consumers needs to be organized in the form of consumer organizations which would take care of their interests. Though in India we do have consumer organizations which are working in this direction, adequate protection is required to be given to consumers. Still, these organizations become powerful enough to protect and promote the interest of consumers. 3. Widespread exploitation of consumers. Consumers might be exploited by unscrupulous, exploitative, and unfair trade practices like defective and unsafe products, adulteration, false and misleading advertising, hoarding, black marketing, etc. Consumers need protection against such malpractices of the sellers. From the point of view of business, a business must also lay emphasis on protecting the consumers and adequately satisfy them. This is important because of the following reasons. One, long-term interest of the business. Enlightened businesses realize that it is in their long-term interest to satisfy their customers. Satisfied customers not only lead to repeat sales but also provide good feedback to prospective customers and thus help in increasing the customer base of business. Thus, business firms should aim at long-term profits maximization through customer satisfaction. Business uses society's resources. Business organizations use resources which belong to the society. They thus have a responsibility to supply such products and render such services which are in public interest and would not impair public confidence in them. 3. Social responsibilities. A business has social responsibilities towards various interest groups. Business organizations make money by selling goods and providing services to consumers. Thus, consumers form an important group among the business stakeholders of business, and like other stakeholders, their interest has to be well taken care of. 4. Moral justification. It is the moral duty of any business to take care of consumers' interests and avoid any form of their exploitation. Thus, a business must avoid unscrupulous, exploitative, and unfair trade practices like defective and unsafe products, adulteration, false and misleading advertising, hoarding, black marketing, etc. 5. Government intervention. A business engaging in any form of exploitative trade practices would invite government intervention or action. This can impair and tarnish the image of the company. Thus, it is advisable that business organizations voluntarily resort to such practices where the customers' need and interest will well be taken care of. The Consumer Protection Act 2019. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 seeks to protect and promote the consumers' interest through speedy and inexpensive redressal of their grievances. It extends to the whole of India. It is applicable to all types of businesses, whether a manufacturing or a trader, and whether supplying goods or providing services, including e-commerce firms. The Act confers certain rights to consumers with a view to empowering them and to protect their interest. Who is a consumer? A consumer is generally understood as a person who uses or consumes goods or avails of any services. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, a consumer is a person who buys any goods or avails services for a consideration which has been paid or promised, or partly paid and partly promised, or under any scheme of deferred payment. It includes any user of such goods or beneficiary of services if such use is made with the approval of the buyer. It applies to both offline and online transactions through electronic means or by teleshopping or direct selling or multi-level marketing. However, any person who obtains goods or avails services for resale or commercial purpose is not treated as a consumer and is outside the scope of Consumer Protection Act 2019. Consumer rights. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 provides for six rights of consumers. Terms and definitions. 1. Complaint. Any allegation in writing made by the complaint for obtaining relief with respect to restrictive trade practices, defect in goods, or deficiency in service provided, overcharging of price or offer of goods or service in injuries to life and safety. 2. Complainant means one or more consumers or any voluntary consumer association, central or state government, or any or the central authority or the legal heir or legal representative, or a parent or legal representative in case of a minor. 3. Spurious goods, goods that are falsely claimed to be genuine. 4. Unfair trade practices, a trade practice for the purpose of promoting sales, use, or supply of any goods or service falsely represents in quality, standard, quantity, composition, style, or model. 5. Restrictive trade practice, a trade practice which manipulates price or affects the flow of supply in the market relating to goods and services in such a manner that an unjustified cost is imposed on the consumer. 6. Defect, any defect, imperfection, shortcoming, or inadequacy in quality, nature, and manner of performance is in relation to goods or a product. Deficiency, any default, imperfection, shortcoming, or inadequacy in quality, nature, and manner of performance in relation to any service and includes act of negligence or omission or commission or withdrawing relevant information which causes loss or injury to the consumer. Injury, any harm illegally caused to any person in body, mind, or property. Product, any article or goods or substances or raw materials or any extended cycle of such products, either in gaseous, liquid, or solid state, possessing intrinsic value, capable of delivery either as assembled or a component product, or manufactured to trade. It does not include human tissues, blood, blood products, and organs. 10. Product seller, any person in the course of a business imports, sells, distributes, leases, installs, prepares, labels, markets, repairs, maintains, or otherwise involved in placing the product for commercial use or service provider. 11. Product liability, responsibility of a product manufacturer or seller of any product or service to compensate for any harm caused to a consumer by defective product manufactured or sold by the deficiency in services. These rights include the following. 1. Right to safety. The consumer has a right to be protected against goods and services which are hazardous to life, health, and property. For example, electrical appliances which are manufactured with substandard products or do not conform to safety norms might cause serious injury. Thus, consumers are educated that they should use electrical appliances which are ISI marked, as they would be an assurance of such products meeting quality specification. Right to be informed. The consumers have a right to have complete information about the product he intends to buy, including its ingredients, date of manufacture, price, quantity, directions of use, etc. It is because of this reason that the legal framework in India requires the manufacturers to provide such information on the package and label of the product. Right to be assured. The consumer has the freedom to access variety of products at competitive prices. This implies that the marketers should offer a wide variety of products in terms of quality, brand, price, size, etc., and allow the consumer to make a choice from amongst these. 4. Right to be heard. The consumer has a right to file a complaint and to be heard in case of dissatisfaction with a good or a service. It is because of this reason that many enlightened business firms have set up their own consumer services and grievance cell. Many consumer organizations are also working towards this direction and helping consumers in redressal of their grievances. Right to seek redressal. The consumer has a right to get relief against the unfair trade practices of restrictive trade practices or unscrupulous exploitation in case the product or a service falls short of his expectation. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 provides for redressal to the consumers, including replacement of the product, removal of the defect in the product, compensation paid for any loss or injury suffered by the consumer, etc. Right to consumer education. The consumer has a right to acquire knowledge and to be a well informed consumer through life. He should be aware about his rights and the relief available to him in case of a product or service falling short of his expectations. Many consumer organizations and some enlightened businesses are taking an active part in educating consumers in this respect. Consumer responsibility. The Consumer Protection Act empowers the consumer to fight against any unscrupulous, exploitative, and unfair restrictive trade practice adopted by the seller. Consumer rights by themselves cannot be effective in achieving the objectives of the consumer protection. Consumer protection can, in effect, be achieved only when the consumers also understand their responsibilities. A consumer should keep in mind the following responsibilities while purchasing, using, and consuming the goods and services. 1. Be aware about the various goods and services available in the market so that an intelligent and wise choice can be made. 2. Buy only standardized goods and they as they provide quality assurance. Thus, look for ISI mark on electrical goods, FPO mark on food products, hallmark on jewelry, etc. Learn about the risk associated with products and services, follow manufacturers' instructions, and use the products safely. 4. Read label carefully so as to have information about the prices, net weight, manufacturing and expiry date, etc. 5. Assert yourself to ensure that you get a fair deal. 6. Be honest in your dealing. Choose only from legal goods and services and discourage uns- unscrupulous practices like black marketing, hoarding, etc. 7. Ask for a cash memo on purchase of goods or service. This would serve as a proof of the purchase made. 8. File a complaint in an appropriate consumer forum in case of shortcomings in the quality of goods purchased or services availed. Do not fail to take an action even when the amount involved is small. 9. Form consumer societies which would play an active part in educating consumers and safeguarding their interest. 10. Respect the environment, avoid waste, littering, and contributing to pollution. Ways and means of consumer protection. A consumer's awareness about their rights and responsibilities is just one of the way in which the objectives of the consumer protection can be achieved. There are other ways in which this objective may be achieved. 1. Self regulations by business. Socially responsible firms follow ethical standards and practices in dealing with their customers. Good and ethical practices encourage firms to realize that it is in their long term interest to serve the customers in a rightful manner. Many firms have set up their customer services and grievance cells to redress the problems and grievances of their consumers. Know your rights: right of the consumer, right to safety, right to be informed, right to be heard, right to be assured, right to seek redressal, right to consumer education. 2. Business association. The Association of Trade, Commerce and Business, like Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce of India, FICCI, and Confederation of Indian Industries (CII) have laid down their code of conduct, which laid down for their members the guidelines in their dealing with the customers. Consumer awareness. A consumer who is well informed about his rights and the relief available to him would be in a position to raise his voice against an unfair trade practice or unscrupulous exploitation. In addition to this, an understanding of his responsibilities would also enable a consumer to safeguard his interests. In this regard, the Department of Consumer Affairs GOI has been undertaking Jago Grahak Jago campaign for generating awareness among the consumers. 4. Consumer organization. Consumer organizations play an important role in educating consumers about their rights and providing protection to them. These organizations can force business firms to avoid malpractices and exploitation of consumers. 5. Governments. The government can protect the interest of the consumer by enacting various measures. For example, GOI has set up a toll free national consumer helpline number 1-800-114-000 for this purpose. The legal framework in India encompasses various legislations which provide protection to consumers. The most important of these regulations is the Consumer Protection Act 2019. The act provides for a central authority to regulate matters relating to violation of rights of consumers, unfair trade practices, and false or misleading advertisements which are prejud- prejudicial to the interest of the consumers. This is known as the Central Consumer Protection Authority CCPA, a three-tier machinery at the district, state, and national level for redressal of consumer grievances. Redressal agencies under the Consumer Protection Act. For the redressal of the consumer grievances, the Consumer Protection Act 2019 provides for setting up of a three-tier enforcement machinery at the district, state, and the national level. As per the Consumer Protection Rules 2021, the jurisdiction of District Commission, State Commission, and National Commission is as follows. 1. District Commission. District Commission has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of goods or service paid as consideration does not exceed 50 lakh rupees, either on the first hearing or at any later stage. It appears to the District Commission that there exist elements of settlement which may be acceptable to the parties. It may direct them to give their consent for settlement of dispute through mediation within 5 days. In case the parties agree for settlement or by mediation and give written consent, the District Commission refers the matter for mediation, and the provisions relating to mediation shall apply. However, in the event of failure of settlement by mediation, proceeds with the complaints. If the complaint alleges defect in goods which cannot be determined without proper analysis or test of goods. The Commission obtains the sample of goods, seal it, and refers to the appropriate authority for analysis. In case of services, the dispute is settled based on the basis of evidence brought to its notice by the complaint and can ask for any required information, document, or records from the service provider for settlement. In any of If any of the parties are not satisfied by the order, or district commission can appeal against such order to the state commission on the ground of fact or law within a period of 45 days from the date of order. 2. State commission. It is established by the respective state government and ordinarily function at the state capital. State Commission has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of goods and services paid as consideration that exceeds rupees 50 lakh but does not exceed 2 crore. If any of the parties are not satisfied by the order of the state commission, can appeal against such order to the national commission within a period of 30 days of such order. National Commission. The National Commission have territorial jurisdiction over the whole country. National Commission has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of the goods or services paid as consideration exceeds 2 crore of rupees. If any of the parties are not satisfied by the order of the National Commission, can appeal against such order to the Supreme Court of India within a period of 30 days of such order. Relief available where district or the state or national commission is satisfied about the defect in goods or deficiency in service on any unfair trade practice or claim for compensation under the product liability issues an order to remove the defect in goods or deficiency in service. 2. To replace the defective product with a new one free from any defect. 3. To refund the price paid for the product or the charges paid for the services. 4. To pay a reasonable amount of compensation for any loss or injury suffered by the consumer due to negligence of the opposite party. 5. To pay punitive damages in appropriate circumstances. 6. To discontinue the unfair, restrictive trade practices and not to repeat it in the future. 7. Not to offer hazardous goods for sale. 8. To withdraw the hazardous goods from sales. 9. To cease manufacture of hazardous goods and to desist from offering hazardous services. 10. Compensate for any loss or injury suffered by consumer under the product liability action and withdrawal hazardous products from being offered for sale, etc. However, every order of a district commission, the state commission, or national commission is deemed final if no appeal for such order is made by any of the parties involved in the dispute. Role of consumer organization and NGO. In India, several consumer organizations and NGO and non-governmental organizations have been set up for the protection and promotion of the consumer's interests. Non-government organizations are not profit organizations which aim at promoting the welfare of the people. They have a constitution of their own and are free from government interference. Consumer organizations and NGO perform several functions for the protection and promotion of interests of consumers. These include educating the general public about the consumer rights by organizing training programs, seminars, and workshops. 2. Publishing periodicals and other publications to impart knowledge about the consumer problems, legal reporting, relief available, and other matters of interest. 3. Carrying out comparative testing of consumer products in acts accredited laboratories to test relative qualities of competing brands and publish the test results for the benefit of the consumers. 4. Encouraging consumers to strongly protest and take an action against the unscrupulous, exploitative, and unfair trade practices of the sellers, providing legal evidences to consumers by way of providing aid, legal advices, etc., in seeking legal remedy. 6. Filing complaints in appropriate consumer courts on behalf of the consumers. 7. Taking an initiative in filing cases in the consumer court in the interest of the general public, not for any individual. 8. Consumer Unity and Trust Society, Jaipur. Summary. Importance of consumer protection. From the point of consumers, consumer protection is important because consumers are ignorant, unorganized, and exploited by sellers. Consumer protection is also important for a business because 1. It is in the long term interest of the business. 2. Business uses society resources. 3. It is a social responsibility of the business. 4. It has moral justification. 5. It avoids governmental interventions in the functioning of the business. Legal protection to consumers. The Indian legal framework consists of a number of legislations which provide protection to consumers. These include 1. The Consumer Protection Act 1986, 2. The Indian Contract Act 1872, 3. The Sales of Goods Act 1930, 4. The Essential Commodities Act 1955, 5. The Agricultural Production, Grading and Marketing Act 1937, 6. The Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954. 7. The Standards of Weights and Measurement Act 1976. 8. The Trademarks Act 1999. 9. The Competition Act 2002. And 10. The Bureau of Indian Standards Act 1986. Consumer rights. The Consumer Protection Act 1986 provides for six consumer rights. These are right to safety, right to be informed, right to choose, right to be heard, right to seek redressal, right to consumer education. Consumer responsibilities. In addition to exercising his rights, a consumer should also keep in mind his responsibilities while purchasing, using, and consuming goods and services. Ways and means of consumer protection. There are various ways in which the objectives of consumer protection can be achieved. These include self regulation by business, 2. Business associations, 3. Consumer awareness, 4. Consumer organizations, 5. Government. Redressal agencies under the Consumer Protection Act. The Consumer Protection Act provides for setting up of three-tier enforcement machinery at the district, state, and the national level. They are referred to as the District Forum, State Commission, and the National Commission. There are various relief available to a consumer under the Act. The appropriate consumer court may pass an order for removal of the defect in goods, replace a defective product, refund the price of the product, pay compensation for the loss suffered, etc. Consumer organizations and NGOs. In India, several consumer organizations and non governmental organizations are playing an active role in protection and promotion of the consumer's interests.